Millionaire lost in storm. Finds black man's cottage. He shares his fire, food, stories. Storm ends. But she asks, "Can I stay longer?" The rain started as a whisper against the windshield, then became a roar. Victoria Brennan gripped the steering wheel of her Range Rover, cursing herself for ignoring the weather alerts. 31 years old, founder of a multi-million-dollar marketing firm in Charlotte, and she'd let arrogance override common sense. The mountain road twisted ahead, visibility dropping to nearly zero. She'd left the city Friday afternoon, needing escape from another exhausting week of client meetings and revenue projections. Her lakeside cabin near Asheville promised solitude, imported wine, and silence. What it didn't promise was this: a flash storm turning mountain roads into rivers, her GPS signal dying, her phone showing one bar, then none. The Range Rover hydroplaned. Victoria's heart slammed against her ribs as the vehicle skidded sideways, tires screaming. She fought for control, barely avoiding the ditch. Her hands trembled on the wheel. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not to her. She'd planned everything, checked weather patterns for the week, packed efficiently. She donated to disaster relief funds annually, wrote checks that helped people in situations like this. She wasn't supposed to be the person needing help. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating dense forest on both sides. No houses, no lights, nothing but trees and rain and her own ragged breathing. The fuel gauge sat at a quarter tank. Her phone was useless. The temperature was dropping. Victoria had spent her entire adult life building walls between herself and vulnerability. She'd grown up in Chapel Hill, daughter of a real estate developer and a former debutante. Private schools, cotillions, summers in Martha's Vineyard. She'd learned early that money meant security, that the right connections opened doors, that people without resources simply hadn't worked hard enough. Her business proved it. She'd turned a $50,000 loan from her father into an empire through sheer determination. But determination couldn't stop the storm, and money couldn't materialize a gas station from thin air. Another lightning flash revealed something ahead, a break in the trees. Maybe a driveway. Victoria turned without thinking, desperate for any shelter. The Range Rover bumped down a narrow dirt path, branches scraping against expensive paint. She didn't care. The path opened into a small clearing. There, barely visible through the downpour, stood a cottage. Small, weathered, lights glowing in the windows. Smoke rose from a chimney despite the rain. Someone was home. Victoria killed the engine, staring at the structure. It looked ancient. The kind of place she'd drive past without noticing. Part of her hesitated. What kind of person lived this far from civilization? But thunder boomed overhead, and her options had evaporated with her cell signal. She grabbed her Burberry coat, threw open the door, and ran. "Hello, the Shade of Love family. So happy you're here. Before we jump into the next part of the story, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your country and state in the comments. Also, how's the story been so far? We love reading your thoughts. Yes, every single comment. And it really keeps us motivated. Let's aim for 50 comments on this video. Think we can hit it? Your support means the world. So don't forget to comment, share, and keep the energy flowing. Victoria pounded on the wooden door, rain soaking through her coat within seconds. The porch offered minimal shelter, just a narrow overhang and floorboards that creaked under her designer boots. Through the window she could see warm light, the flicker of a fire. She knocked again, harder. The door opened. A man stood there, maybe 35, tall and solid, dark skin catching the firelight behind him. He wore a flannel shirt and jeans, both worn but clean. His expression showed surprise but not alarm. "Please," Victoria said, water streaming down her face. "My car. The storm. I need help." He stepped aside without hesitation. "Get in here before you catch pneumonia." The cottage interior hit her immediately. One large room serving as kitchen, living area, and what looked like a workspace. Handmade furniture, a stone fireplace with actual wood burning, shelves packed with books. Simple, rustic, nothing like the sleek modernism she preferred. But it was warm and dry, and her teeth had started chattering. "Thank you," she managed. "I'm Victoria. Marcus." He grabbed a towel from a hook, handed it to her. "Bathroom's there if you want to change. Storm knocked out the main roads about an hour ago. You're lucky you found this place. Lucky. The word grated. She wasn't lucky. She was stranded, stuck in a stranger's cottage in the middle of nowhere. Her weekend ruined, her schedule thrown off. She'd have to reschedule Monday's meetings, disappoint the investors flying in from New York. But she smiled politely, accepted the towel. Do you have cell service? I need to make some calls. Tower's down. Happens every time we get storms like this. Of course it did. Victoria's mind raced through contingencies. Her assistant knew her general location, but not this specific detour. Her cabin was still miles away, unreachable in this weather. She was genuinely stuck, dependent on this man's hospitality. The thought made her skin crawl, not from fear but from the unfamiliarity of dependence. She didn't rely on strangers. She hired people, paid for services, maintained control. This situation represented everything she'd spent her life avoiding. Marcus moved to the fireplace, added another log. I've got stew on the stove if you're hungry. Coffee too. That's kind, but I don't want to impose. The words came automatically. Her mother's training about gracious refusal. You're already here, Marcus said simply. May as well eat. Victoria clutched the towel, acutely aware of how she must look. Expensive clothes soaked through, makeup probably running, her carefully maintained image dissolving in mountain rain. In Charlotte, she controlled every interaction, every impression. Here, she controlled nothing, and that terrified her more than the storm outside. Victoria emerged from the bathroom wearing her spare clothes, cashmere sweater, designer jeans that cost more than most people's monthly rent. She'd dried her hair as best she could, reapplied minimal makeup from the emergency kit in her purse. Some semblance of control restored, even if the setting remained beneath her usual standards. Marcus had set 2 bowls on a small wooden table. The stew smelled better than she expected, rich with herbs and vegetables. He poured coffee into mismatched mugs, completely unbothered by the lack of matching dinnerware. Victoria's own kitchen featured a complete Williams-Sonoma set, every piece coordinated. Thank you again, she said, sitting carefully. The chair wobbled slightly. I really appreciate your hospitality. I'm happy to compensate you for the trouble. Marcus glanced up from his own bowl. Compensate me? Well, yes, for the food, the shelter. I'm sure this is an inconvenience. She pulled out her phone, dead now but still representing her capability. Once service returns, I can Venmo you or... I'm not running a bed and breakfast, Marcus said, his tone flat. You needed help, that's it. The words stung more than they should have. Victoria took a sip of coffee to cover her embarrassment. She'd only been trying to be courteous, to maintain some transaction that made sense. Charity felt wrong when she was the one receiving it. She donated to causes, to organizations, to people whose struggles she understood in abstract terms. Being the recipient twisted something in her chest. I didn't mean to offend, she said carefully. I'm just not used to accepting help. I can tell. The observation landed with uncomfortable accuracy. Victoria focused on the stew, which was genuinely delicious. Homemade bread sat in a basket between them, still warm. When had she last eaten bread that wasn't from an artisanal bakery charging $8 a loaf? So what brings you up here? Marcus asked. Besides the storm, I have a cabin near Asheville. Weekend getaway. She didn't mention the cabin's price tag, the private dock, the smart home features. I needed a break from work. What kind of work? Marketing consulting? Corporate branding? Digital strategy? We help companies refine their market position. The explanation rolled out smoothly, practiced from countless networking events. Marcus nodded, breaking bread with his hands instead of using a knife. The gesture seemed so casual, so unconcerned with propriety. Sounds intense. It is, but rewarding. I built the firm from scratch. Pride crept into her voice despite herself. Started with 3 clients and a laptop. Now we have 40 employees and offices in 2 cities. That's impressive, Marcus said, and he sounded genuine. Must take up most of your time. Success requires sacrifice. Another rehearsed line, one she'd told herself for years. My father always said comfort comes from complacency. Your father sounds ambitious. He is. Was. He retired last year, turned his business over to my brother. A flicker of old resentment crossed her thoughts. The real estate empire had gone to Preston, despite Victoria's offers to buy in. Some traditions died hard, even in progressive families. Marcus stood, clearing the bowls. Storm's not letting up. You should stay tonight. Couch folds out. Victoria opened her mouth to protest, then closed it. Outside, rain hammered against the windows with renewed fury. She had no choice. And that reality sat heavy in her stomach, far heavier than the stew. The fire crackled while Marcus washed dishes by hand in a deep ceramic sink. No dishwasher, Victoria noted. No modern conveniences she took for granted. She sat on the couch, a patchwork quilt draped over her shoulders, watching him work with efficient movements. Her gaze wandered to the bookshelves. Philosophy texts, classic literature, histories of civil rights movements, a worn copy of James Baldwin essays, books on carpentry and sustainable living. Nothing she'd expected from someone living in a mountain cottage with no cell service. "You read a lot," she observed, immediately feeling foolish for stating the obvious. "Not much else to do up here," Marcus replied, drying a bowl with a cloth. "No streaming services when the internet's spotty. Don't you get bored? Isolated?" He turned, leaning against the counter. "Bored? No. Isolated. Sometimes. But it's better than what I had before." The statement hung between them, weighted with unspoken history. Victoria's curiosity prickled, but her upbringing demanded she wait for him to offer information rather than pry. Except he didn't elaborate. He just returned to drying dishes, humming something low and melodic. "What did you do before?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "Before here, I mean." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I worked in Atlanta. Tech sector. Software development." Victoria straightened. "Really? I wouldn't have guessed." "What would you have guessed?" His tone remained neutral, but something sharpened in his posture. She scrambled to recover. "I just meant, living out here seems so different from tech culture. The Silicon Valley types I know wouldn't last a day without high-speed internet and DoorDash. I'm not from Silicon Valley." "Right, Atlanta. Still, it's a big shift. From that world to—" She gestured around the cottage, trying to find words that wouldn't sound condescending. "This. To what? Simplicity? Peace?" Marcus set down the towel. "I left because the world you're describing almost broke me. 70-hour weeks, constant performance reviews, being the only black developer in rooms full of people who questioned my credentials daily. I had everything you're supposed to want. Corner office, 6 figures, stock options, and I was miserable." The words struck Victoria like cold water. "But you gave up so much." "Did I?" Marcus moved to the fireplace, adjusting logs with an iron poker. "Or did I trade money for sanity? Status for actual living?" Victoria felt something uncomfortable twist in her chest. "It's just, people work their whole lives for opportunities like that. To walk away seems what? Wasteful. Ungrateful." He turned to face her fully now. "You think I don't know how lucky I was to have those opportunities in the first place? I'm black in America, Victoria. I know exactly what doors were supposed to stay closed, but knowing that didn't make the cost worth paying." The room felt smaller suddenly. Victoria pulled the quilt tighter, realizing she'd stumbled into territory she didn't understand. In her world, success meant climbing higher, earning more, expanding constantly. The idea of voluntarily stepping away felt foreign, almost threatening. "I didn't mean to judge," she said quietly. "Didn't you?" The question sat between them, unanswerable. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains, nature indifferent to their collision of worldviews. Victoria stared at the fire, feeling the first crack in her certainty. Maybe she didn't understand as much as she thought she did. Victoria couldn't sleep. The couch was comfortable enough, the quilts warm, but her mind spun in circles. Marcus had retreated to what she assumed was a bedroom. She'd glimpsed a door at the back of the cottage, leaving her alone with the dying fire and her thoughts. His words echoed. "The only black developer in rooms full of people who questioned my credentials daily." She'd worked with tech companies, had sat in meetings with dozens of executives. Had she noticed the lack of diversity? Probably. Had she thought deeply about what that meant for the people navigating those spaces? Not really. It was easier to focus on deliverables, on branding strategies and market positioning. Those were clean problems with measurable solutions. Race and belonging felt messier, more complicated than quarterly reports. But Marcus's face when he'd asked, "Didn't you?" had held something that unsettled her. Not anger exactly, more like recognition, like he'd seen this response before, this polite deflection masking deeper indifference. Victoria thought about her company. 40 employees. How many were black? 3, maybe 4. She'd always told herself they hired on merit, that the best candidates got positions regardless of background. But what if the pipeline itself was the problem? What if merit was shaped by access she'd never had to question? Her father's voice surfaced in her memory. If people want success, they need to work for it. Nobody handed me anything. But that wasn't true, was it? Her grandfather's money had seeded her father's business. Her college fund had been secured before she was born. She'd networked through country club connections, gotten her first major client through her mother's bridge club. She'd worked hard, absolutely. Late nights, sacrificed relationships, relentless focus. But she'd never worked without a safety net. She'd never feared homelessness if a venture failed, never worried about medical debt derailing her trajectory. Those securities were invisible until someone pointed them out. Marcus had pointed them out without even trying. The fire popped, sending sparks up the chimney. Victoria pulled the quilt to her chin, feeling something unfamiliar settling in her bones. Not quite shame, not quite guilt, more like the beginning of awareness, uncomfortable and unwelcome. She'd spent years building an identity around self-made success. What happened when that story developed cracks? The rain continued its assault on the roof, relentless and cleansing. Victoria closed her eyes, but sleep remained elusive. Tomorrow the storm would clear. She could return to her world, her certainties, her carefully constructed life. But part of her wondered if those certainties would fit quite the same way after tonight. Hello, the Shade of Love family. So happy you're here. Before we jump into the next part of the story, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your country and state in the comments. Also, how's the story been so far? We love reading your thoughts. Yes, every single comment. And it really keeps us motivated. Let's aim for 50 comments on this video. Think we can hit it? Your support means the world. So don't forget to comment, share, and keep the energy flowing. Morning arrived with unexpected sunlight. Victoria woke to the smell of coffee and something baking. She sat up, disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was. The cottage looked different in daylight, less rustic, more intentional. The furniture she'd dismissed as simple revealed itself as handcrafted, every joint fitted with precision. Marcus stood at the stove, flipping what looked like pancakes. He'd already dressed, hair still damp from a shower. "Morning," he said without turning. "Coffee's ready. Mugs are in the cabinet." Victoria stood, stretching muscles stiff from the unfamiliar couch. She poured coffee, noting the beans looked freshly ground. "You didn't have to make breakfast. I was making it anyway." He plated pancakes, set them on the small table. Real maple syrup in a glass jar. Fresh butter. Storm cleared around dawn. Roads should be passable by noon once the water drains. Relief and something else, disappointment, flickered through her. She sat, accepting the food. "Thank you for everything. I know I wasn't exactly gracious last night. You were scared. People react different to that." They ate in comfortable silence for a moment. Then a knock interrupted them. Marcus rose, opened the door to reveal an older woman, maybe 60, black, carrying a covered dish. "Morning, Marcus. Brought you some..." "Oh," she stopped, seeing Victoria. "Didn't know you had company." "Mrs. Chen, this is Victoria. Her car got caught in the storm. Victoria, this is my neighbor, Sarah Chen." "Pleasure," Sarah said warmly. "Marcus, I brought that cornbread you like. Figured you might need comfort food after that weather. Lost a tree in my backyard. Is the house okay?" Marcus's concern was immediate and genuine. "House is fine, but the tree took out part of my fence. Animals might get in." Marcus was already moving, grabbing a jacket from a hook. "I'll come by after breakfast, help you patch it." "Oh, honey, you don't need to do that. I can call..." "Mrs. Chen, you know those repair companies charge triple after storms. I've got materials left over from fixing my porch. Won't take more than a couple hours." Sarah's eyes grew soft. "You're too good, Marcus. Too good." After she left, Victoria stared at him. "You're just going to spend your Saturday fixing her fence?" "She's 72 and living on a fixed income," Marcus said simply. "What else would I do?" "But don't you have plans? Things you need to do?" Marcus looked at her with something like pity. "Victoria, the whole point of living like this is having time for what matters. Mrs. Chen matters. Her fence matters. My plans can wait." The statement was so foreign to Victoria's world that she couldn't immediately process it. In Charlotte, time was currency. Every hour had opportunity cost. Helping neighbors was something you did through HOA fees and charitable donations, not manual labor on a Saturday morning. But watching Marcus gather tools, seeing the ease in his movements and the genuine care in his expression, Victoria felt another crack form in her understanding. Maybe she'd been measuring value with the wrong metrics all along. Victoria's phone buzzed back to life around 10 a.m. 17 missed calls, 34 texts. Her assistant, her brother, 2 major clients, her father. The connected world came flooding back, and with it, her other identity. She called her assistant first. "Melissa, I'm fine. Yes, I got caught in the storm. No, I don't need rescue. I'll be at the cabin by this afternoon." "Victoria, thank God. Your father has been calling every hour. He's furious you went off-grid without backup plans." Of course he was. Richard Brennan didn't understand uncontrolled variables. "Tell him I'm fine and I'll call him later." She hung up before Melissa could continue. Her father's contact appeared immediately. She declined it, knowing the lecture that awaited. Then her brother Preston's text appeared. "Dad's losing it. Where the hell are you?" Before she could respond, Marcus returned, dirt on his jeans, looking satisfied. "Fence is patched. Mrs. Chen's good for now." Victoria pocketed her phone, suddenly self-conscious about the digital leash she'd just reattached. "That was kind of you. Ready to head out? I can drive you to your cabin if your car won't start." They walked to her Range Rover together. It started immediately. Expensive engineering, reliable despite the storm. Marcus checked the tires, the undercarriage, competent and thorough. "You're good to go," he said. "Drive careful, roads are still slick." Victoria sat in the driver's seat, keys in hand, but didn't turn the engine over. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why'd you really leave Atlanta?" "The real reason." Marcus leaned against the doorframe, considering. "There was an incident. I'd been at the company 5 years, had just led a project that saved them millions. At the celebration dinner, my boss got drunk, made a comment about how articulate I was, how surprised he'd been that I fit in so well." Victoria winced. "I realized I'd spent 5 years proving I belonged in a room that should have been open from the start. I was exhausted from being the exception, from making white comfort my responsibility. So I left." He straightened. "That answer your question?" "Yeah," Victoria said quietly. "It does." She drove away slowly, watching him disappear in the rearview mirror. Her cabin appeared 30 minutes later, exactly as she'd left it. Sleek, modern, empty. She walked through rooms filled with expensive furniture and felt nothing. Her phone rang. Her father, again. This time she answered. "Victoria Elizabeth Brennan, do you have any idea how irresponsible—" "Dad, I'm fine." "Fine? You disappeared in a storm without proper preparation. This is exactly the kind of carelessness that destroys businesses. What if you'd been seriously hurt? What if clients couldn't reach you? I was stranded at someone's house. A good Samaritan who helped me. What kind of person? Did you get their information? We should send something, a gift basket or—" "Dad." Victoria cut him off, surprising herself. He didn't want compensation. He just helped because that's what people do. Silence on the other end. Then, well, regardless, you need to be more careful. People like us can't afford these mistakes. People like us. The phrase echoed after they hung up, sounding uglier than it ever had before. Victoria lasted 3 days in the cabin before driving back to Marcus's cottage. She told herself she wanted to thank him properly, maybe offer to donate to a local charity in his name. But honesty whispered she wanted something else. Answers to questions she was only beginning to formulate. His truck was parked outside. She knocked, heart racing for reasons she couldn't explain. Marcus opened the door, surprise crossing his features. "Victoria, hi, I hope I'm not intruding. I wanted to thank you again. Properly this time." He stepped aside, letting her in. The cottage felt different now, welcoming rather than foreign. "You drove all the way back to say thank you?" "No," she admitted. "I came back because I can't stop. Thinking about what you said, about Atlanta, about leaving." Marcus poured 2 cups of coffee, settled into his chair by the fire. Victoria took the couch, hands wrapped around the warm mug. "What do you want to know?" he asked. "Everything? Nothing? I don't even know where to start." She took a breath. "In my world, success looks like climbing. More money, bigger deals, higher status. You had all that and walked away. I can't reconcile it, because you've never had to question whether the climb is worth it," Marcus said gently. "When you're black in corporate America, every step up is a negotiation with your dignity. Every meeting is a calculation of how much authenticity you can show before people get uncomfortable. But that's... Victoria stopped. That can't be everyone's experience. It's not, but it's common enough. He leaned forward. Let me ask you something. In your company, when you hire, what does a culture fit mean? Victoria shifted uncomfortably. Someone who shares our values. Work ethic, communication style, professionalism. And what does professionalism look like? I don't know. Appropriate dress, communication standards, timeliness. Whose standards? Marcus pressed. Because I guarantee what's considered professional in your office looks different than what's professional in a black barbershop or a Latino community center. But only one of those gets called universal. The words hit like stones, heavy and unavoidable. Victoria wanted to argue, to defend her policies and practices. But she'd seen her office, watched who got promoted, who got mentored, who got second chances after mistakes. I never thought about it that way, she said finally. Most people don't. That's the whole system. It works by being invisible to the people it advantages. So what do I do? How do I fix it? Marcus smiled, sad and knowing. That's the question, isn't it? First step is admitting there's something to fix. Second step is listening when people tell you about their experiences instead of explaining them away. Like I tried to do the other night. Yeah, like that. They sat in silence, fire crackling between them. Victoria felt something fundamental shifting inside her, like tectonic plates rearranging. It was terrifying and necessary all at once. Can I come back? She asked. To talk more? I have so many questions. Marcus studied her, then nodded. Doors open. But Victoria, this kind of education isn't my job. I'm sharing because you're asking, but don't mistake me for a teacher hired to make you comfortable with discomfort. I understand, she said. And for the first time, she thought she actually might. 2 weeks later, Victoria stood in her conference room presenting to Preston Financial, a potential client worth $3 million annually. Her brother Preston sat in the corner, observing, their father's latest attempt to push them toward collaboration. The Preston Financial team filled the other chairs. 5 white men in their 50s, all wearing similar suits, all radiating the comfortable confidence of inherited wealth. Our rebranding strategy focuses on modernization while maintaining your legacy appeal, Victoria explained, advancing her presentation. We're proposing a digital campaign targeting... Excuse me, interrupted Gerald Preston, the CEO. This diversity angle you keep mentioning. We're a family business serving family businesses. Our clients aren't looking for, how do I say this delicately, virtue signaling. Victoria's stomach clenched. It's not virtue signaling. It's accurate representation of... Our client base is 93% white, Gerald continued. That's just demographics. Nothing personal. We serve who we serve. Demographics don't exist in a vacuum, Victoria heard herself say. They reflect historical access and opportunity structures that... Preston caught her eye, shaking his head slightly. A warning. Don't lose the client. But Victoria was thinking about Marcus's cottage, about Mrs. Chen's fence, about articulate and culture fit, and all the coded language she'd used without thinking. She was thinking about the 3 black employees at her own company, and how she'd never once questioned why that number was so low. Mr. Preston, she said carefully, have you considered that your demographics might reflect barriers rather than preferences? That qualified clients from diverse backgrounds might not feel welcome in spaces that don't reflect them? Silence dropped like a guillotine. Gerald's face hardened. Are you calling me racist? I'm suggesting that systems can have exclusionary effects without individual intent. That impact matters more than intention. This meeting is over. Gerald stood, his team following like synchronized swimmers. We'll be taking our business elsewhere. They filed out. Preston remained, staring at her with something between shock and fury. What the hell was that? That was me not lying to keep a client, Victoria said, her voice shaking. That was you throwing away $3 million on a moral crusade. Preston grabbed his briefcase. Dad's going to love this. His daughter, the social justice warrior. You've lost perspective, Victoria. Maybe I've gained it, she shot back. After he left, Victoria sat alone in the conference room, hands trembling. She'd just torpedoed a major deal. Her father would explode. Her team would question her judgment. The financial hit would be significant, but she kept thinking about Marcus's question. What else would I do? She pulled out her phone, scrolled to his number. They'd exchanged information during her visits. She'd been back to the cottage 4 times, each conversation peeling away another layer of comfortable ignorance. "Marcus? It's Victoria. I think I just blew up my career." His laugh came through warm and knowing. "Tell me what happened." She did, words spilling out in a rush. He listened without interrupting, without judging, without offering easy solutions. "So what now?" she finally asked. "Now you figure out who you want to be," Marcus said. "The person who plays it safe, or the person who does what's right even when it costs something?" Victoria looked out at Charlotte's skyline, at the city where she'd built her empire. For the first time, she wondered if she'd been building the wrong thing. "I think I already know the answer," she said quietly. "Yeah," Marcus agreed. "I think you do too." The fallout was immediate and brutal. Richard Brennan showed up at Victoria's office the next morning, his face the particular shade of red that meant consequences were coming. $3 million, he said without preamble. "You cost us $3 million because you couldn't keep your politics out of business." "It wasn't politics, Dad. It was ethics. Ethics don't pay salaries. Ethics don't keep lights on." He paced her office like a caged animal. "I gave you seed money to build something profitable, not a soapbox." "You gave me a loan I paid back 3 years ago," Victoria corrected. "This company is mine. These decisions are mine. And when those decisions tank the business, when your employees lose their jobs because you prioritized feeling righteous over practical reality?" The words stung because they held truth. She had employees depending on her. Benefits, mortgages, families. Her choices rippled beyond personal conscience. But Marcus's voice echoed. "Impact matters more than intention." "Dad, did you know we've only hired 3 black employees in 5 years? Out of 40 total hires?" Richard stopped pacing. "We hire qualified candidates. Who determines qualification? Who decides what counts as professional experience? What schools matter? What networks provide access?" Victoria stood, facing him across her desk. "We've been replicating our own image and calling it merit. This is that mountain man, isn't it? He's gotten in your head with all this. His name is Marcus, and he didn't get in my head. He held up a mirror." Her father's expression shifted from anger to something closer to disappointment. "I raised you better than this. To understand how the world actually works. Maybe the world works wrong." The statement hung between them, a chasm opening in real time. Richard straightened his tie, reclaimed his briefcase. "When you're ready to be serious again, call me. Until then, don't expect my support." He left. Victoria stood alone in her office, shaking but certain. That afternoon, she called a company-wide meeting. All 40 employees gathered in the conference room, confusion evident. They'd heard about the Preston financial disaster. "I need to be honest with you," Victoria began. "No notes, no preparation. I've been running this company with blind spots. I've been replicating systems that exclude people without even noticing. That ends now." She outlined new plans: diverse hiring, initiatives, equity audits, partnerships with HBCUs, and minority business organizations. Some employees looked skeptical. Others looked relieved. A few looked angry. "This might cost us clients," she acknowledged. "It might hurt our bottom line short term. Anyone uncomfortable with this direction is free to leave with a positive reference and 2-month severance. No hard feelings." Silence. Then James, her creative director, one of her 3 black employees, spoke up. "I've waited 5 years to hear you say this." Tears surprised Victoria. "I'm sorry it took so long." After the meeting, she drove to Marcus's cottage. He was splitting wood, shirt damp with sweat despite the cool air. "I did it," she said, getting out of the Range Rover. "I burned it down, the old way. I'm rebuilding." Marcus set down the axe, smiled wide and genuine. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying. Right, both." "Yeah," he said. "That sounds about right." "Hello, the Shade of Love family. So happy you're here. Before we jump into the next part of the story, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your country and state in the comments. Also, how's the story been so far? We love reading your thoughts. Yes, every single comment. And it really keeps us motivated. Let's aim for 50 comments on this video. Think we can hit it? Your support means the world, so don't forget to comment, share, and keep the energy flowing. The Charlotte Business Journal requested an interview 3 weeks later. Victoria's changes had generated attention, both praise and criticism. She'd lost 2 major clients but gained 4 smaller ones actively seeking diverse partnerships. Her father still wasn't speaking to her. Preston had called her naive, but she'd also received calls from young professionals thanking her, from business owners asking for consulting on equity practices, from former classmates admitting they'd been watching her journey with hope. The interviewer, Amanda Nichols, was sharp and direct. You've made controversial changes. Critics say you're prioritizing politics over profit. Response? Victoria had prepared for this, rehearsed answers that would sound measured and professional. But sitting under studio lights, she thought about Marcus's cottage, about Mrs. Chen's fence, about articulate and culture fit, and all the small violences she'd participated in unknowingly. I was wrong, she said simply. For years I built a successful business while ignoring systemic inequity. I told myself I'd earned everything through merit alone, never examining how privilege shaped my access to opportunity. A friend helped me see differently. The man from the storm, Amanda said, clearly having done her research. Marcus Webb, former software developer living in the mountains. Yes, he showed me that success at the cost of others' dignity isn't success. It's extraction. Strong language? Necessary language. Victoria leaned forward. I'm not claiming to be perfect now. I'm still learning, still making mistakes. But I'm trying to build something better. A company where talent matters more than pedigree, where different perspectives are valued, where people don't have to edit themselves to belong. And if that costs you business, then those weren't clients worth having. The interview went viral. Victoria's phone exploded with responses. Angry, supportive, confused, grateful. Her mother called, voice tight, asking why Victoria insisted on embarrassing the family. Her assistant forwarded emails from venture capitalists interested in supporting her new direction. But the call that mattered most came from James. I'm bringing my cousin's resume, he said. He's been trying to break into marketing for 2 years. Gets interviews but no offers. I think he's qualified. I also think he's been hitting the same walls I did. Send it over, Victoria said immediately. Let's talk. That evening, she drove to the mountains. Marcus was on his porch, reading by lamplight. I did a big interview, she announced, climbing the steps. Said some things I can't take back. Good things or scary things? Both. Mostly true things. Marcus closed his book, studied her in the golden light. You look different, lighter somehow. I feel it. She sat beside him on the porch swing. Turns out honesty weighs less than pretending. They rocked in comfortable silence, mountains dark against the evening sky. Victoria had lost her father's approval, several clients, her comfortable certainty about the world. But she'd found something more valuable, a conscience she could live with. Thank you, she said quietly. For the shelter, for the truth, for everything. Marcus's hand found hers. Thank you for listening. 6 months later, Victoria stood in Marcus's cottage preparing dinner. She'd learned to cook here, trading her reliance on restaurant delivery for the satisfaction of creating something with her own hands. The cottage had become a sanctuary, a place where, stripped of her credentials and accomplishments, she could simply exist. Her company had stabilized. The equity initiatives were working, slowly, imperfectly, but measurably. She'd hired 12 new people, 8 from underrepresented backgrounds. James had been promoted to partner. Her revenue had dipped initially, but was climbing again, this time built on foundations she believed in. Her father still kept his distance, though her mother had started calling again, carefully neutral. Preston had surprised her last month by asking questions about her hiring practices, admitting his own company could improve. Small movements, but movements nonetheless. Marcus entered with firewood, stacking it beside the hearth. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm, Victoria spending weekends at the cottage, Marcus occasionally visiting Charlotte for dinner or gallery openings. Whatever this was between them, friendship, partnership, something emerging neither had named, it felt right. Melissa called, Victoria said, stirring pasta sauce. We got invited to present at a diversity and inclusion conference. She wants to know if we're interested. Are you? Victoria considered. 6 months ago, I would have said no. Would have thought it was outside our expertise. But yeah, I think we should. Look at you, Marcus said warmly. Growing. I had a good teacher. She set down the spoon, turned to face him. Can I ask you something? When I showed up that night, soaking wet and arrogant, did you know that you'd change my life? Marcus laughed, the sound rich and genuine. I knew you needed shelter from a storm. Didn't realize the storm was inside you, too. It was, Victoria admitted. Is, still, sometimes. I catch myself falling into old patterns, making assumptions, Having to stop and reconsider. That's the work. It doesn't end. He moved closer, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. But you're doing it. That matters. Victoria thought about the woman who'd pounded on this door 6 months ago. Desperate, privileged, unconscious. That woman had died in some fundamental way, replaced by someone rawer, but more real. I don't regret it, she said, any of it. The lost clients, the family tension, the hard conversations. I'd do it all again. Even getting lost in the storm. Especially getting lost in the storm. She smiled, genuine and free. It brought me here. Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall, soft and transformative. Inside the cottage, warmth glowed from the fireplace and something deeper, the warmth of growth, of challenge, of becoming someone better than you were. Victoria had sought shelter from weather and found shelter from ignorance. She'd left behind certainty and found truth. She'd lost a version of herself she'd thought essential and discovered she didn't miss it at all. The storm had ended. The real work had just begun, and she'd never been more ready.